One. Good morning, Phys-Emotional Us. We're here today for our continuation podcast series with Hans Christian. Today, he's going to be sharing with us the subtopic of sleep. Welcome, Hans, to our podcast.
Thank you, Scott. I'm excited to discuss this topic with everybody today. I selected this because for a number of years now, I've had a lot of difficulty sleeping. I can't fall asleep at a reasonable time. Even if I go to bed early, I lay awake. And no matter how late I fall asleep, I wake up early. Sometimes I get only 3, maybe 4 hours of sleep a night. And when we decided to research and look into various topics of health and wellness, I thought it was a great opportunity to maybe find a solution to my problems and to learn more about why sleep is sometimes so difficult to find and so important for us as human beings. Before I go too much further, I would just like to take a moment to thank my primary resource in my research. This is Dr. Matthew Walker. He is self-proclaimed sleep diplomat, and he has dedicated his professional career to the study and education of sleep in an effort to help us all find sleep and improve the quality of our sleep. He is professor of neuroscience and psychology at UC Berkeley. And we will find, or he has taught me, and I hope to convince the rest of you that honestly, the shorter you sleep, the shorter you will live. That old axiom, "I'll sleep when I'm dead," is almost prophetic, and it's too true. You will not live as long if you deprive yourself of sleep, and the quality of time you have on Earth will be both shorter and impacted negatively. You will not enjoy yourself as much as you would if you were fully rested. Sleep, as we will see, is the single most effective thing we can do each and every day to reset the health of our brain and body.
Well, Dr. Matthew Walker's research and work sounds like an amazing research or resource. Where would be able to find information about his work?
Good question, and I encourage you to seek out more because we have limited time today. I challenge you, in fact, to go onto Google and try to research sleep for 1 minute without coming up with this guy's name. He is all over YouTube, TED Talks, Google Talks. He's on NPR podcasts, Joe Rogan, tons of free resources where you can learn all you want about sleep from his own words. And he put out this really conversational and well-written book on sleep. It is titled "Why We Sleep: Unlocking the Power of Sleep and Dreams." And it's kind of a conversational discussion, if you will, on sleep, really making it palatable and easily understood by anyone who's curious about learning more.
So if this guy has dedicated his whole life's work to informing us about sleep, it must be pretty important.
That's too true. So there are two main types of sleep in humans. First, we have non-REM sleep, or NREM sleep, and this portion of sleep is primarily dedicated to memory maintenance and retention. It is followed each night by REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep, and we've all heard about this before, and it's correlated with our powerful dreams. And REM sleep is when our powerful dreams take place, and it's also very cathartic. It's almost an emotional healing type of sleep. There's not a single tissue or body tissue or mental process that is not enhanced by sleep or severely impacted if we don't get enough sleep. And as we'll see, it's very important to get a good night. 8 hours of rest is recommended each night. So there are stages to sleep, and you might ask, what exactly is sleep? Well, it's made up of these two phases, as I just discussed. Each night, non-REM sleep, or NREM, will happen before REM, but happens in 90-minute windows. So every 90 minutes, you start a new stage of NREM and fall into REM sleep again. And this plays out all through the night. As I was saying, non-REM sleep is for memory maintenance, and it's further subdivided into 4 separate stages, which I'll talk about on the next slide. REM sleep is for maintenance of emotional and mental health. It also helps us with intelligent information processing because it promotes creativity and problem solving. The 4 stages.
So Hans,
Yes,
back on that slide. So it sounds like if you can take like what we call a maintenance nap during the day, or a 60-minute, 90-minute nap, you may get some benefits from that for memory, but that doesn't replace getting the full evening of sleep.
Scott, I don't actually have what you just mentioned on any of my slides, and I'm glad you brought it up. So most of the Western world, we sleep monophasically, which means we try, or we should be trying, to get our full 8 hours of sleep all at once in one night. And this might not necessarily be how we evolved to sleep. Because if we look at civilizations that are untouched by modern conveniences, electricity, and don't have any of the advances of industrialized society, we have some tribes in Africa that we can look at. They're totally untouched by electricity and modern conveniences. They actually sleep biphasically. They'll go to sleep around midnight, sleep for maybe 6.5 hours or so, wake up, have their day, and around noontime, just like all of us do, sitting around a conference table or in class around 2 or 3 p.m., we all start to nod off, not because we're listening to some cool rock music, but because we all get tired around the same time. And this seems like it is part of our physiology, that we are programmed to take a nap. And these tribes that I was discussing earlier, they actually do this, and they're not troubled by, electricity is a blessing and a curse. It has allowed us to stay up way too late and to really throw off our sleep rhythm. So a nap is recommended, so long as you don't take it so late in the day that it throws off your sleep schedule at night. And it kind of turns out that it might not be as important how you get your 8 hours, so long as you get it. It could be in stages, a nap and with a majority of sleep at night.
Yeah, thanks. That's super informative.
So NREM sleep is divided into 4 stages. As we get ready for bed, obviously we're awake, right? And we then start passing into a light sleep, and that's stage 1. Stage 2, we're fully asleep, but we're still easy to wake up. And the rejuvenation that sleep provides hasn't started in a big way yet. But when we get into stages 3 and 4, they are collectively grouped in what is called slow wave sleep. And here are some very interesting things happen. As we sink into slow wave sleep, our heart rate slows and our body cools by a couple degrees. And our brain activity really calms down until we get into those deepest stages of sleep. Around stage 4, we see, and the image I put over here on the right tries to illustrate this a little bit, all of a sudden we see these massive brain waves start to propagate. And you can think of it like a football stadium. Before the game starts, everyone is out there having their own separate conversations. There's a lot of noise, a lot of chatter. It's all disjointed, and it is not in harmony or in unison. And that's our waking brain. That's what's happening in our head as we go through the day. We're all over the place. But when we get into stages 3 and 4, the game starts. And all of a sudden, the entire stadium is cheering for the home team. Defense, defense, and all of our brain cells, all of our synapses and our neurons are firing in unison. And we get these massive, powerful brain waves. And they are super therapeutic. And what happens in stage 4 is we actually have a transfer of memories from our short-term memory to our long-term memory. And these brain waves are the physical manifestation of that memory transfer. And when we don't sleep, we forget. And we also don't erase our memory. So how useful would it be if you go out to find your car and you remember everywhere you parked your car your entire life? Another function of sleep is to forget the stuff that's not important and to put into long-term storage what is important. So non-REM sleep, if you're not getting it, you're not remembering. REM sleep, on the other hand, is equally important, but totally different beast. In REM sleep, we have increased brain activity. In fact, the brain activity is almost equal to our waking state. The parts of the brain that fire up are the visual spatial regions, the motor cortex, the hippocampus, which is where the short-term memory I was just describing is stored, and the emotional centers of the brain, the amygdala, for example. What is deactivated is the prefrontal cortex. And the activated regions really help us with it's almost like therapy for the day that we just had or the troubling experiences of the day. And it helps us calm down, manage those emotions so that we wake up feeling refreshed. It's almost like REM sleep can almost be thought of as a sanity insurance. So as I was just saying, REM sleep is the maintenance of emotional and mental health. It's like an overnight therapy, sanity guard. And it's really good for learning and mental health in information processing as well. It inspires creativity and promotes problem solving. So it's, as we'll discuss later on, why it's, what happens when you don't get sleep and how learning is impacted. This is one, foreshadowing here why sleep helps with learning and cognition, primarily in the REM stage.
Hans, this sounds like so vital to our health and well-being. Is this unique to humans, or is this for all creatures?
Evolution is funny, right? And sleep, if you think about it, it's really weird. When we're sleeping, we're not defending ourselves. We're vulnerable to predation. We're not gathering resources. We're not finding a mate. We're not reproducing. We're not raising young. And on any one of those grounds, sleep should have been highly selected against by the evolutionary process. It should not exist. But the fact that it does exist, and not just in humans, but every single species to date that we have looked or science has looked at, every single species sleeps. From ancient earthworms to birds, mammals, fish, everything sleeps. And if it has so many obvious shortcomings, but every species on Earth sleeps, it has to be vital. It must be absolutely fundamental to life. Otherwise, it's the biggest mistake evolution ever made.
Well, thanks for sharing those points about the evolution of sleep. What happens if we don't get enough sleep?
Well, what's the big deal, right? If we don't get sleep, there's a lot that goes wrong. We have physiological damage. We have an impaired immune system. We have mental health issues. In fact, there is not a single mental health disease where sleep is regular in the individual. Every single mental health disorder that you can think of exists in combination with sleep deprivation. No one who sleeps well 8 hours a night healthily has a mental disorder that has been researched or has been found in studies. Physical fitness and reproductive health is also affected. In fact, men who sleep an average of 5 hours a night have statistically smaller testicles than men who get a full 8 hours of sleep a night. And I think that should catch a lot of people's attention. And learning is also dramatically impaired.
I think about when Tristan was talking about physical fitness, my boys, they claim like they need to get enough sleep because they grow and they gain their muscle size from all their efforts they've done in the day. they need to reap the benefits by sleeping in the morning. But it sounds like that's true, right? We need to get that sleep to have our bodies rebuild and to reknit those muscles that we tore apart while we were working out, and the things that we've dealt with during the day of our normal jobs or lives. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about physiological damage in an upcoming slide, and I'll hit on that a little bit more. But I mean, like I said in the beginning, there is not a single body tissue or mental process that is not enhanced by sleep. So our cardiovascular system. There's some big fancy words here, but they're familiar to all of us. When we don't sleep, our body activates its sympathetic nervous system, also known as the fight or flight response in human beings. And when this happens, our heart rate increases. That's the tachycardia. And a stress hormone called cortisol is released by our body. And this actually constricts our vasculature, our blood vessels. In addition to constricting our blood vessels, the sympathetic nervous system and the increased heart rate increases blood pressure. So we have hypertension. We have hypertension now in constricted vasculature with a faster heart rate. And this is very damaging for our body. The image here is to indicate, it's like redlining your car, and that's the only way you drive it. Always over, downshifting and keeping the car at the red line, and you're going to break down. You're going to have a much shorter life than if you take good care of your car and if you take good care of your body by sleep. The good thing is that the body has a way to heal the damage when the fight or flight response is engaged. This response, the sympathetic nervous system, kicks in, it's supposed to, when you're threatened. And you have more energy, more adrenaline, your heart rate's faster, your vascular is constricted, and you can run quicker and you can run further, or you can fight. It's not meant for when you sleep. When the sympathetic nervous system kicks in, it puts a lot of strain on the vasculature. So the body has growth hormones, and these heal the endothelium, which is the lining of your vasculature. The problem is that the growth hormone is secreted when you sleep. So when you don't sleep and the sympathetic nervous system kicks on and does all this damage, you don't have the healing benefit that sleep provides. And you are doing severe damage to your cardiovascular system. Metabolism as well. Tristan in his episode was sharing with us about a little bit about his weight loss journey, and sleep is, it kind of sounds weird. We should be awake and exercising, but sleep is very important for your metabolism and your weight control as well. It really regulates insulin, so glucose is the body's power supply, and it's a sugar. And when you sleep, your body is really good at managing glucose levels and insulin. But when you don't sleep, it's thrown off. So much so that if you deprive an individual of sleep by just 2 hours a night for 1 week, an otherwise totally healthy individual, and they go to a doctor, they will be classified as pre-diabetic. So lack of sleep contributes to obesity. And I'm sorry, the 5 hours a night there, so I guess if you're deprived by 3 hours, that is when you'll be classified as pre-diabetic, and you'll have a higher risk of diabetes and other health-related issues from a lack of sleep. The immune system. So our body has these cells that float around the bloodstream. They have a really cool name, natural killer cells, and they go around and they seek out invasive bodies in your body. They attack them, they inject them, they secrete a protein into the invaders and destroy them. And they are really, really good at this job, and they keep us alive and they keep us healthy. They fight cancer. If you deprive a person if you keep them awake all night, you make them pull an all-nighter because they're studying or a student is studying, the percentage of natural killer cell decrease, it's not trivial. They lose 70% of the natural killer cells in their body from 1 night without sleep. And the effects last. A year later, that reduction can still be detected in studies. In addition, sleep gives us resistance to illnesses. It improves vaccine efficacy. And as I just said, the long-term effects of not getting sleep exist over a year later from one night of missed sleep. Learning, should be important to us all right now. As we discussed earlier, the 2 stages of sleep, primarily non-REM, but also REM to some extent, help us remember. It really helps us forget and make space for memories that we need to have. If you want to pull an all-nighter, it's not a good idea. Your immune system crashes, your cardiovascular system's thrown off, your metabolism is all screwed up, and without that memory refresh, you're not going to be as effective a student. There was a study done in Minnesota where they looked at the top 10% of students and the cream of the crop. And they took the average of their SAT scores, and they performed remarkably well. They got, on average, 1288. That gets you into a good school. That gets you a pat on the back. That sets you up for a good run at life. Then the next year, they pushed back the start time of school by 1 hour. So they moved it from 7:45 to 8:45. And then they looked at that year's top 10% SAT score averages, just like they did the prior year. The only thing that's more remarkable than giving these students a well-deserved extra hour of sleep was the improvement to their SAT scores. It went from 1288 to 1500 average. That is a non-trivial increase. That will change the quality of university the kids go to, and quite possibly change the entire trajectory of their life. What also happened when they did this study in Minnesota was they noticed that specifically in the age ranges 16 to 18, vehicular accidents and vehicular fatalities in that age group decreased by 65%. Compare this to the invention of ABS, or automatic braking systems. That was praised as the most revolutionary advancement in auto technology. It was going to save all kinds of lives and improve vehicular safety more than anyone could have imagined. Statistically, ABS decreased vehicular fatalities by 25%. So giving these kids an extra hour of sleep, they were more well rested, their motor skills were improved, their mental faculties were improved as demonstrated by the SAT scores, and so related directly to life, fewer accidents, and to improved quality of life from better achievements in school. And back to the I'll sleep when I'm dead. It's not funny. It's not a good idea. Sleep now and live longer.
Hans, growing up in the 80s and 90s, I saw a lot about mothers against drunk driving, but I know how important that is to not drink and drive. But I know there's been a shift in the focusing of, and I see these signs on the side of the road about non-drowsy driving or distracted driving with cell phones. But that must correlate with those statistics that you just shared with us about sleep and motor skills and the accident rate.
There's so many studies on it. There are reaction studies. How quickly can you tap a button when a light comes on? There is data from the auto industry and the TSA. It's non-disputable at this point. It is a clear-cut case that sleep is absolutely important and will help you stay alive because you're better prepared to respond to the unexpected. A kid, you're tired, your motor skills are deprived, and a kid darts out in front of your car. I'm not saying you're gonna hit the kid, but you have a better chance of not hitting him if you've had a full night of rest. So how can we sleep better? this really should be the focus of what I'm sharing today. The answer is not sleeping pills and it's not drugs. They're attractive solutions because they're easy. But there's a difference between being unconscious and being asleep. When you're unconscious, you don't get any of the restorative effects of sleep. And there's a few alternatives. The most interesting one is CBTI, or cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And this is where you actually visit with a therapist and you have a few sessions and you work on what is the underlying issue for not getting sleep. And it's interesting, again, it's so cool how everything that we're doing ties in so nicely together. Scott, you shared with us about stress. Bakli, you shared with us about anxiety. And stress and anxiety are the two number one causes. I guess you can't have two number one causes, but are two primary causes for insomnia in people. And most people are actually stressed out about not sleeping. So first you have to address where the anxiety, where the stress is coming from. And a therapist and cognitive behavioral therapy will help you do that. Another technique is called sleep restriction therapy. And here we try to retrain our bodies. So the idea is that you want to relearn what sleep is. So you decide what time you're going to wake up. And even if you didn't get to sleep until 1 hour before you set this time to wake up, you get out of bed and you wake up and you manage your way through that whole day, even if it's struggling, and you try to go to sleep as soon as you're tired at night. The key here is that the bed is for two things and two things only, for sleeping and for sex. If you go to bed and you just lay there and you're waiting to fall asleep hour after hour after hour, you are teaching your brain that you're associating being awake with your bed. And that is conditioning yourself in the opposite direction. So you want to wake up at a given point every single day, no matter how late you went to bed, go to sleep when you're tired. And if you can't fall asleep after 15 or 20 minutes, get up. Don't go sit in front of a blue screen. Don't go play video games or watch TV. These screens really mess up. And there's data to prove this. These screens really mess up your sleep schedule. Go read a book in dim light. Go watercolor. Go write a journal. Go meditate. Any one of these practices will help you find that sleepiness. And as soon as you feel that sleepiness, go to bed. Go lay back down. And again, if you can't sleep, get back up, dim lights, quiet, relaxation, and go to sleep when you're tired, not before. And it will take a while to condition yourself, but these techniques have been proven to work through randomized clinical trials, and they are more advantageous than sleeping pills, drugs, alcohol, marijuana, any other solution. And I encourage everybody to, this will go to the bottom of this video here, and I will have links to some of these studies, some of these resources. And I encourage everybody to continue doing your research, especially if you're not convinced, because I just started learning about sleep for over the last couple months, and I am fully convinced now, and I'm very excited to start trying to implement some of what I've learned to improve my quality of sleep, and hopefully to see improvements in other aspects of my life. I've gained a lot of weight in these years that I haven't been able to sleep well. I used to be very drawn to the outdoors and to physical exercise, and I'm just lazy. I find that I'm not as alert and not as sharp in the day. My dogs don't like it because they don't get out as much. And I really look forward to the benefits that a full night of sleep will bring me when I master it. And I encourage everybody to explore it for themselves as well.
Thank you, Hans. As you were just sharing a lot of this information about sleep, it really is ringing true for me. Some of the things that I've been trying to teach my kids, and for me, it's good to get this information to back up what I was thinking in my efforts to say, hey, go to bed on time so you can wake up early and work. don't try to offset being tired with an energy drink and hanging out with your friends or gaming till 2 a.m. and then continually trying to combat that through caffeine or whatever. And I do know that my best sleep comes when I'm out camping, when I'm under the stars, or when I'm out on the ocean on a boat or something, and you kind of lose track of time, and it's like, I am ready to go to bed. What time is it? Oh, it's only 8:15. So when the screens are gone, when the lights are turned down, and you could just get into that meditative state, that's when my body really tells me when I should be going to bed. And the more we can incorporate that, it sounds like, into our normal day life in our house with TVs and electronics and electricity and lights and everything, the better we will be with all those health benefits. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, that's what you said about your kids. It's true. And it's interesting that we go through different ways of sleeping as we age. And it's really a shame, and I want everyone to listen to this. It's we have a sleep stigma in society right now. People are embarrassed to admit if they get 8 hours or 8.5 hours of sleep a night. And we look at those people like they're lazy. Like, oh, well, it must be nice. I only get 4 hours of sleep a night because I'm so busy and I have things to do, loser. And that's the wrong attitude. Yeah. We're really, no one ever does that to a baby. We understand in an infant how important sleep is. And the more they sleep, the better. They're growing, they're developing, and sleep is vital. And it doesn't change as we get older. That importance is still there for us all through life. And there are very strong links to dementia and to Alzheimer's. And it is between those two diseases and a lack of sleep, because as we get older, as I'm sure most of you have grandparents or realize that, as you get older, your schedule changes. You start having dinner at 3 p.m. and you sleep 4 hours a night and you wake up at 4 a.m. And this lack of sleep and the fact that it is so therapeutic and it's a conditioning agent for memories, it's not difficult to see the correlation between the lack of sleep in the elderly and dementia and Alzheimer's. Also in the links below, I will include a little bit of info on a transcranial device, this little brain stimulator that is still in development. It's not approved by the FDA yet, but you attach these pads to your head when you go to sleep, and it will actually help amplify those deep brain waves I was talking about as part of the Non-Rem Sleep. And it has been shown to improve the learning in clinical trials of school children, their memory retention and their cognition the following day by 80%. And the science and the researchers, I should say, are very curious about what this brain amplification device will do in the senior, and it might be a really powerful tool against dementia and Alzheimer's. So I'll include a link to that as well. And thank you for reminding me about that, Scott. Anybody else
when you talk about not looking at the screen, so it reminds me of something I found in my research about anxiety. So when we look at the screen, it's like we have a tunnel vision. We look at one particular spot, right? And it will stimulate the sympathetic system, the fight or flight system.
That's right.
That's awake us. And so when we meditate and we sit in a lotus pose like a Buddha, and we kind of half close our eye, and we have it's called peripheral vision. Our eye look to the side, not focus on anything in the front, but we try to look to the side. So that will stimulate the parasympathetic system, and it will slowly put our body to relax and rest.
That's right. I remember you sharing some of that with us in your episode, Bockley. Thank you for reminding us of that. That's absolutely right. Meditation. Dr. Matthew Walker, the the gentleman I introduced at the beginning of this, he's a hardcore scientist. He's all about data. And he, in one of his podcasts, he shares with the person who he's having a discussion with, that when he decided to look at the efficacy of meditation on sleep, he was very skeptical. He thought it was going to be a lot of hot air and a lot of silliness. But what he learned, and from some of his studies, he now meditates every single day before going to sleep, to quiet his mind, to get into that state of being that is at the most receptive to a good night of sleep. And thank you all for joining me here today. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks again, Hans. We look forward to having those references up on the screen, and for our audience to continue on with our next coming episodes in our podcast format. We will be visiting with Joseph and talking about nutrition and seeing what he has to share with us to help improve our lives and to equally balance out our physical and emotional well-being. Thank you again for joining us today in our podcast, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for having us, Scott.